Hello and welcome to the next leg of the BITS2 series, BITS2GRE. I'm Sanskriti from Alumni Relations Cell, and I'll be your host for the day. Graduate Record Examination is a standardized test conducted by Education Testing Agency. It's an admissions requirement for many graduate schools, especially those in the US and Canada. Today, we have two of our fellow students from BITS2GRE who have aced the GRE to share their insights and the journey for the same. With great pleasure, I introduce Pragnesh Patel, a FAA student and a former research intern at the University of Texas at Austin. He scored 335 and 340 in the exam. Our second speaker is a very own ex-ARC coordinator, Balajee. He is a third-year ECE student who scored 333 on 340 in his second year itself. Before we begin, there's something I'd like to address. All the questions will be answered towards the end of the talk. And while asking questions in the Q&A section, please make sure you address them to all the panelists to avoid them getting skipped. With that said, I'll ask Balajee and Pragnesh to take over.
Thank you, Sanskriti. All right, let's get started. I want to thank Alumni Relations Cell for organizing this. I think it comes at a very correct and appropriate time, as I believe a lot of people are going to be your GRE soon from my back. And yeah, I guess also this is one of the first events which they have integrated under the Alumni Mentorship Program umbrella. And it's a really good program. I think you'll be getting more details about it later. But yeah, cool. So let's just get into the session. So who's the session for? Well, if you want to go for the master's or a PhD within the next 5 years, you should probably be paying some attention right now. Also, if you're going to be taking the GRE in the next few months, we've also tailored it accordingly. And yes, people who give GRE for fun, they exist, and this could be useful for you too. And a basic structure of what we'll be doing today is we will look at what GRE is, how it's structured. We will look at the sections that come in your GRE exam. We also give a little bit of detail on how we prepared for it, how you can improve your score if you've already started taking some tests. And in the end, like the host mentioned, we'll have a quick Q&A session in case there are still some questions that we have left out. So we've been provided with the questions that were submitted on the form, and I believe we have integrated it into this talk as well. So, but if you feel like some questions are unanswered, just drop it in the Q&A box. All right. So, well, what GRE is like it's a test which kind of judges you on your logical reasoning, math, and English, and it's mandatory for most higher study options. Even if you're say applying for a B school, you typically require a Gmat score, but the GRE is also an accepted substitute. Right? I think it's worth mentioning that because there were a few questions which were like, I don't know if I want to do an MBA or a master's. So either way, GRE is good. The ETS website, which ETS is basically the organization which organizes GRE. So they have this score conversion from GRE to Gmat. Right? You enter your quant in verbal scores and you get a equivalent Gmat score as well. So even if you have to take a Gmat, a GRE works perfectly fine. Right? And it's something which is not very hard to crack. It just takes a little bit of effort. And yeah, it's something that people, once they've given it, they never want to talk about, but they'll still bring it up in every single chance they get to bring it up. Okay. Cool. So yeah, I'll let Pragnesh take over this part.
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Balajee. So, so basically, I'll just talk about like after you reach the center and you're done with all your formalities and you sat for your you sat for your GRE test. So what's going to happen now? So the first section which you're going to face is going to be the analytical writing section, and it's, I think, one of the most underrated section, and no one just exactly gives it a lot of importance. So, but in my opinion, for someone who didn't write a single English essay in, like, after completing my 12th board exams, this was one of the toughest sections I faced in the exam. And basically you'll have to write two essays which are 30 minutes each, and after that you'll get, I think between the sections also you'll get a 1 minute break, and then you'll have a quant or verbal section, and after that it's just there'll be five sections of just random verbal or quant. So out of those five, definitely two will be verbal and two will be quant, and the fifth section is kind of like an experimental section, and it can be either verbal or quant, and it's mainly for research purposes for the organizers of the test. So the fifth section won't be exactly counted in your final score, but the catch is you won't exactly know which is the experimental section. So it can be any of those last five sections. So just give every section as its as just think about it in this way, that this section is going to be counted in my final score, and just give um, uh, just write that section in that way. And if you feel you didn't do well in that section, just think it's an experimental section, it's all right, and just go ahead and finish all your other sections. So after the third section, I guess there's like a 10-minute break in which I think you're allowed to like go outside, eat some food, and like just refresh for a little bit. And between each section there'll be 1 minute break where you can just like chill for a minute. And after you're done with your all the sections, you will be shown the results. And after that is another important part. It's that do you want to keep that score or not? And after you're done with it, you will be asked if you want to send your scores to some of the universities. So one thing which I'd recommend is, even if you haven't decided exactly if you want to go for masters, or even if you have decided you want to go for masters but haven't decided any universities, just keep four universities in your mind and in the back of your mind, so that, because these four optional test reports are free of cost. So otherwise you'll have to pay like around $30 for each university you send your GRE scores to. So I guess I just recommend just keep four universities at the back of your mind, and you'll be given an option where you can like search a university based on the state, based on its name, and based on some other filters. So that shouldn't be a problem. But I guess just use these four test reports well, and because after that it just gets pretty expensive. And yeah, you can move on to the next slide, Balaji. Okay, yeah. So as I said, this is the analytical writing one is the first section, and one thing I'd like to mention first is that just take each section one at a time in this examination. Like, even if you if you feel you didn't do well in one of the section, or you couldn't complete one of the essays, just stop thinking about it and just go ahead with your exam. Because if you let that get that in the back of your mind, and then you'll just like don't you won't exactly do very well in the other sections as well. So, and you never know actually, like because you might think your verbal section didn't go well, but actually it went well, because even I was thinking I'll get like something around 115 verbal, and I ended up with 165. So just stop thinking about the previous section and just take it one section at a time. So yeah, so in the analytical section, you'll first get so there are two types of essays you'll have to write. So the first one is in analyze an issue, and the second one is in which you have to analyze an argument. So the difference between the two is like so in the issue section, issue essay, you'll basically have to they'll give you a topic, something like is technology making humans lazy, or something like that. and then you'll have to pick a side. You have to pick a position, like if you're for the topic, if you're against this, and based on your position, you have to defend it using arguments and examples, and that's how you'll have to structure your essay, and you'll have to make a compelling argument stating why you are for or against this topic. But in the argument essay, it's somewhat different in the way you'll be given a small paragraph, I guess, and it will have a claim, it will have a statement, and they'll have some evidence to back up that statement. And then based on the instructions, you'll have to, I guess, either comment on the strengths or the weaknesses of the claim that was made in the paragraph. So in the difference is that in the argument essay, you don't exactly get to choose sides. You'll be told in the instructions which side you are on. So another thing which I'd like to point out is read the instructions in both the essays pretty well. Because even in the issue essay, they'll kind of like mention that even if you are choosing I think one of the examples I can give is like, so suppose you're for a topic, suppose you say that you think technology doesn't make humans lazy, but in the instructions they'll mention that you should also point out a way in which that statement might not be true, and how will that affect your position about the topic which is given. So read the instructions carefully, and then proceed to answer the writing section. And a couple of tips I'd like to give is that firstly, there is no exactly a format that you need to follow, but if you read some books, or if you go on YouTube and like just look for tips, people mostly mention that keep an introduction paragraph and have a conclusion paragraph in the end, and keep a couple of paragraphs in between where you will make your arguments. So one tip I'd like to give is that for the paragraphs in between, you'll I think four paragraphs are more than enough. Try to you know base your arguments on some real world examples, because the evaluators actually love real world examples, and it will be great if you could so one thing which I did was so when you practice when you practice just before GRE, try to just remember some of the examples that you have used in your sample essays, because usually GRE has a question bank of around I don't know, I think 2000 topics, and all the questions that are going to be asked in this section are going to be from that bank itself, and you can find that question bank on their official website. And so you can just practice a few questions from that question bank. But one thing you'll observe after practicing a few essays is that there's a general pattern. There'll be some topics that'll be based on science and technology, there'll be some based on art, there'll be some based on some philosophical statements. So there'll be like 5 or 6 type of essays that they can generally ask. So for each type of essay, try to one thing which I did was I kind of kept a track of what examples I was using in my essays. And so the advantage of keeping those examples at the back of your head is that when you're 30 minutes is very less time for doing the writing section. So in that you have to think about points, think about a position, then you have to type the whole essay, then you even have to revise the essay. So the less if you spend less time just thinking about the examples and what you're going to write, then you will have a lot of time to just write the essay. So yeah, so just practice the writing section quite a lot. So I used to practice one essay per day. So I think prepared for like 2 months. So I wrote around 50 essays, like 25 for the issue and 25 for the argument essay. And just like whenever you sit down to study for GRE, the first thing which I did was first write one essay for 30 minutes, and then I moved on to some other questions like quant or verbal questions. So this way, I was just able to practice what's going on every day, a little bit of the writing section. And another important thing is that type your essays. Don't just write it on a notebook, because at the end of during the final day, you'll have to actually type it on a keyboard. So typing speed matters a lot. If and just if yeah. So another thing is that just
Just a
time.
second. Yeah,
Yeah.
before you move on, right? Because you mentioned how we have to actually type it out. I would also recommend that you actually type it out on something which does not have spell check, right? Because when you actually sit for the GRE, the software, right, where you actually enter the essay, it doesn't have a spell check. So if you're going to be making mistakes, then it's not going to point out. And generally, when it's being scored, they don't make a fuss out of each and every mistake that you make, but it's expected that you don't make too many mistakes with either spelling or grammar, right? So, I'd suggest you not do it on Word, for example, right? And then later on, you can maybe paste it into Word and check whether what you did is fine.
Yeah. So one more thing I think that I'd like to point out is that a lot of people don't give a lot of importance to this section because it doesn't actually count towards the official score. So for people who are actually thinking about going for a PhD, the writing section matters a lot, because the professors want to see that you have the ability to write research papers and your thesis and stuff like that. At least 3.5, keeping it above 3.5 should be like the bare minimum. But I'd recommend at least 4 should be a good score for the writing section. Anything above 4, it's great. If you're applying for a PhD, then try to keep it about 4.5 or 5. That'll be good. And someone asked in the questionnaire about how to evaluate your essays. So one thing which I did was so there are a lot of books you can use for preparing for GRE. There's the ETS book, there's the Manhattan Prep book, then Kaplan book is also there, and there are a couple of other books also. So most of these books actually have sample essays. Like they will they will have a topic, and they will have different essays for different scores. Like for a score of 6, they'll have an essay. Then for a score of 5, they'll have an essay. So by reading those essays, you can kind of get an idea of what a six mark essay looks like, what a 5 mark essay looks like. So based on that, you can kind of get a gist of how well you did. And while practicing, you can just use the topics, the sample essay topics that are there in those books. And after you're done with your essay, you can just read the sample answers as well, and then try to compare it with the answers that they have given, and then you can kind of get an idea of how well you did in this section. And is there anything else? Balajee, do you have anything to add?
Yeah. I think you mentioned about like how you can score yourself, right? So I believe there's some software. I was just trying to locate it. I couldn't get it now, but I'm very sure that there is one website which wherein you can submit your essay and you can get it graded. I think it allows some 2 essays per email or something like that. So I mean, just make multiple emails, right? So like you can get your essays tested that way. And another
Okay.
thing is that what I did was I had like the instant reviews online program, right? Like my dad taught me to getting it. So they basically grade your essays and they actually give feedback on your essays. Right? There's like a bunch of editors who sit behind the scenes and they actually go through your essays and you actually get feedback which you can incorporate into your next essay. And they have like around 10 tests. So that's like 20 essays that you're going to get graded on. Right. And like he mentioned, I believe most universities have a cutoff score of around 3 or 3.5, which you definitely have to cross. Otherwise, it's not a deal breaker, but I think they kind of start um, questioning your English proficiency.
Yeah,
Yeah,
as I said, PhD, I think for PhD, this is more important than for masters, but you have to cross the cutoff. So I haven't seen a cutoff higher than 3.5 till now. So I guess just keeping it above 3.5 is, I think, all right, in my opinion.
right. Yeah. Good. All right. Let's move on to the next section then.
Yeah, sure.
Okay. Right. So, like the next one is the quant section, where now you start actually getting into questions per se, and I think that this is something which you guys need to remember, right? The scoring on GRE is very weird. You cannot predict what score you will get. It doesn't matter if you got like everything right. I believe you get 170 in that case, but even then, like there's no guarantee. Is my it's definitely true, right? So let's say that there are definitely two sections on math which will get graded. Okay, and the first one is gonna be easy. Okay, like that's kind of how they grade it. They say it's an easy level, and unless you cross a certain score on this easy level, the next level is not gonna be hard, right? And when they say hard, it's not hard for Indians. Okay, it's hard for Americans. Right? I think. I'm not sure. So you kind of need to cross around 70% on the first round to ensure you get into the hard round, and you need to cross around 50 to get into the medium round. All right, and let's say you're stuck on easy level, then let's say like if you're stuck on easy level, it means you didn't get everything right in the first round, and getting everything right on the second round, you'll still not be able to reach 170. All right, so it's like theoretically, like hypothetically, let's say you get full on the first easy level and you get full on the second easy level as well, you will still not get 170. Right, that's their metric. Right, so you definitely have to enter the hard section if you want to cross a score of 160. Right, I wouldn't usually cross like the first level and move to a hard level in the verbal section initially when I was writing my first few tests. Right, so I could never actually cross 155 in verbal. So I think that kind of applies to math as well. But yeah, like ensure that you get your first level proper, right? That's like you cannot get 170 otherwise. And yeah, I think you definitely have to focus on a score of 165 on the quant section if you want to do a master's in engineering, right? Like you want to do a master's in any engineering stream, this is the section. This is the section that they would most probably look at when they are evaluating your application, or that's my belief, right? They don't pay that much attention to verbal as they do for quant, and this is not true for, like, say you want to do a higher degree in arts or something like that, or literature, then they look at verbal and they don't really judge you based on your quant score, right? So yeah, that's about the scoring, and yeah, I think it's worthwhile mentioning that it's based on the number of questions that you have not gotten right. Okay, and let's say you miss one question, you can still get a 170 provided it's like a question that they feel is kind of hard, and they're gonna give you leeway for that. Okay, so how do you prepare for the quant section? Well, all of the things that you need to know, all of the theory that you need to know, you already know it. Right? You've definitely done it way back in school. Right? So the only issue is you generally miss out because you cannot finish the section, or B, you didn't read the question carefully, or you made some arithmetic error or something like that, right? So one thing that you got to do is you need to read the question carefully, especially for comparison type questions, where you it's kind of like they say A is defined by this equation, B is defined by this equation, and they give you two inequalities, and they kind of ask, is A greater than, less than, or equal to, or something like that, or you cannot say. for like a comparison, right? And let's say you missed out one corner case, and that's going to change your score by a good amount, right? So you want to typically read the question properly before you start attempting it. You need to look for what they've asked, because generally you see a question and you kind of assume what they've asked, right? So you don't want to do that. You definitely have to practice some math before going to the final GRE. It's not like as a BITS in you'll get 170. While in principle that's possible, without practice you're not going to achieve that, right? Like you kind of need to understand the kind of questions that you will face, and you need to be able to time yourself. Okay, and definitely try to finish the section, because math more than verbal, if you miss out on a question or two, your score's probably going to get hit more, especially if it's a question in the first level, right? And yeah, ensure you progress to the hard mode, because without a score of 165-ish, you're not going to, well, your application is going to be looked down upon when you actually submit it, right? Yeah, and there are different types of questions that you will get on the quant section. You'll get comparison questions where you have to compare two quantities. They will kind of give you how each quantity is defined, and then you have to say whether it's greater than, equal to, less than, or it cannot be compared. Okay. And there is also single choice, multiple choice questions. I mean, single correct answer, multiple choice questions. And there are questions where there's more than one correct answer. All right. So typically, what I noticed is in the multiple choice questions, it's usually a range. So let's say they give you options as 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, and you kind of find out that X kind of lies between 15 to 35, right? Then it's usually like that. Your multiple choice questions are usually like that. You never get like equation, like you don't get a quadratic equation and they ask you for those two rules. That's kind of what I've observed. Maybe Pragnesh has seen different. Have you?
No, I think those are on the questions are on those lines only.
Yeah, so it's usually like estimate the range kind of question, right? And finally, there are numerical questions where you kind of have to work it out and key in the answer. I don't really remember this particular question type, although like I think it's easy, right? And something which I think is very important in the quant section, especially those of you guys who have already taken mock tests would know, is that there is this segment in between which is based on like a graph. Right? There's like 2-3 charts or tables or something like that, and you kind of have to make sense out of this table. So I've noticed that that's kind of where people tend to go wrong, or they waste time rather. And a good way to do it would be to first read the question. Say there are 3 questions based on this table, then read all the 3 questions, figure out what part of that table you actually require. Because it can happen that they give you only 2 charts and those are very easily readable and like you don't actually waste time. But in some cases they give you 3 charts or 2 graphs and 1 table or something like that, and figuring it out entirely and then going to the questions usually kills your time. And it's worse if it turns out that that one annoying chart didn't actually factor into your answers. Right? So I would suggest that you read the question before you actually jump into analyzing the data given. Right? And yeah, I think I've covered this section. Pragnesh, do you want to add something?
So first thing that I want to say is aim for 170 in quant. Like if you want to get the highest possible score that you want to get, then just aim for 170. It isn't very hard. Only one scary thing about it is that if you do 1 or 2 questions wrong, then like you might even get 167. But trust me, it's if you have practice and if you are like comfortable with 10th standard mathematics, then it's not at all tough to get. So one thing which I did was, so in the ETS book, I guess they have section where they explain the theory first. So theory as in like some of the common identities, geometric properties, some basic theorems that are going to be used in these questions. So first, just try to revise your 10th standard math. It will take like 1 or 2 hours maximum, and then move on to the questions. And one thing which I faced was as there was only one section where I figured out that there was only one part of the quant section which I wasn't actually doing well in. So I was using I had a Magoosh account, and so in the Magoosh account, what one thing you can do is like you can keep track of all the mistakes you have done. Uh, like every day you'll be doing, if you're doing 20 questions, if you got one wrong, then you'll kind of you have a history of where you went wrong. So try to so one thing good is even if you don't have a Magoosh account, just keep track of what mistakes are you making. Like, and before the exam, just try to go through that list and see, just try to get it in your mind that, okay, I don't have to do this mistake again, or this is the theorem that I need to remember. Because that will help you get that one question right, which you might have gotten wrong in the exam. And that might have been the reason you get a 169 score in quant. And yeah, as Balaji said, quant is, I guess, the most important section which universities will judge you on. So that's why I'm emphasizing that try to aim for 170 in quant, because I mean, most of the people like just from maybe from United States or from those countries, it's not as easy for them as it is for us. So if you have a perfect score in quant, then it just looks really good on your profile, application profile. And yeah, I guess just revise those formulas and just practice. I guess you should focus more on verbal in general, but just don't leave quant altogether thinking that, okay, I know the questions look easy, I'll be able to do it. Just keep on practicing a few questions every day, like 10, 20, and I guess that will be also enough. And oh yeah, so quant is something that you can practice while doing your mock tests also. So one more thing which I'd like to advise is just give a lot of tests in general. Like, it'll kind of give you an idea of how the actual exam will look like. It will also prepare you for the final day. Like in general, you'll have more experience of dealing with some place where you didn't do well, and you'll have an idea of how it'll be. So and when you're doing mock tests, basically most of the questions topics will be covered in the quant section. So that is also just a good way to practice quant. For verbal section, I'd recommend having a specific book, or like practicing for it specifically. But quant, you can focus on it less, but just don't leave it altogether. But yeah, I guess
Right, I just want to add one more thing here from the Q&A section. There's like a question about calculators. So you're not allowed to bring your own calculator, but you are allowed an on-screen calculator. So I suggest, like, when you you kind of get familiar with the calculator. It's just to help you with the arithmetic though. It doesn't like solve the equations. Although, like, I really doubt you require.
Oh, yeah. One last thing that I want to add is, so the quant section is actually 35 minutes. It's not 30 minutes for each section. So the thing is, you actually have more time to do quant, and you actually don't require that much time. So try to finish the section in like 20 minutes, if possible, 20, 25 minutes. And if you're stuck on a question, don't just keep on trying that question. Move on ahead. Just mark that question and just get back to it after you're done with all the other questions. And I just recommend that at least keep 10 minutes to just revise all the questions that you have done in quant, because it will be easy if you are able to revise all the questions, even though you think it was an easy question and you got it right, you might be able to find out that one silly mistake that will again keep you from getting the perfect score. And it's actually very easy to actually do the whole quant section twice, like do it once first and then revise it again. So at least just try to revise the questions once if possible. That's what I'd recommend to do. Yeah.
Yeah, agreed. Like completely on that. Going back and because like that's how I usually kind of figure out where I made really stupid mistakes, and that time really helps. Yeah, I think I saved like around 3 questions just by going back on the day of my test.
Yeah, even I kind of got like 2 questions. I had actually gotten 2 questions wrong, and then I figured it out when I was revising. So yeah, that's it. Cool. Let's move on to the next slide. So I guess again for people who who lost the habit of reading novels or like just reading in general because of like the 11th or 12th standard, this section might be a bit tough because it's mainly based on the vocabulary of a person. So basically you'll have 3 types of questions. Okay, and now it's showing on my screen. So basically you'll have 3 types of questions. Those first is the reading comprehension. So basically it's like you'll have one comprehension and you'll have like 3 to 5 questions, 3 to 4 questions based on the comprehension. Then you'll have text completion. I guess in text completion you'll have a couple of sentences and you'll have to fill in those and these sentences will have some blanks and you will have to like fill in these blanks according to the appropriate meaning of the sentence. And the third one is sentence equivalence. In this, I guess there'll be one blank in the sentence, and you have to choose 2 words which will give the same meaning to that sentence. So one pattern that you'll see is a lot of these questions will be based on knowing the meaning of the words in the sentences and knowing synonyms and antonyms of those words. So one thing, so yeah, as the slide says, you need to develop a strategy that works for you. Like, I guess there were some questions in the Google Doc that asked like, how should we prepare those words? How should we learn the specific words or improve our vocabulary? I guess it depends on person to person because some people who have the habit of reading might not exactly require to like specifically sit down and learn those specific words. So it depends on person to person. But one thing which I did, like I felt my vocabulary wasn't that great when I started solving a few questions. So Magoosh has this app which has a word bank of around 2,000 words. So all these 2,000 words are separated in decks of around 100 words each. And every day I try to like finish a deck of those 100 words. So what I did was, so basically in that, firstly, this app is free. So I guess even if you don't have a Magoosh account, you guys can like download it on your phone or laptop and use it. So that's fine. Um, but one thing which I did was I had a separate notebook in which I wrote the words which I wasn't able to answer in the word deck, like the words whose meaning I didn't know. So I also had a tab on Google just open, and I used to search the meaning of that word on Google also. So I used to jot down that word, its meaning from whatever Google or some other dictionary or whatever you want to use. And one thing which I also did was I also noted down the synonyms of those words, because there's knowing the synonyms of these words will really help you with text completion. It will also help you with sentence equivalence a lot, because a lot of times it will just happen that they will give you like there'll be I think 6 options and 2 of these will be synonyms, and then you will instantly know, okay, these two will mostly be the answers. But so yeah, try to keep a list of words that you weren't able to answer, and after you're done with a word deck, don't just forget about it. Try to like revise it after a week or so, or just go to the list of the words that you have written, because that helped me a lot. Like I revised them like after a week or so, and every time it kind of was like I again didn't remember some of those words, and then after you do it like 2 3 times, then it it helps you do the verbal section. So one more question which was there in the Google Docs was how important is it to improve your vocabulary or like just sit down and learn those words that I'm talking about right now. So in my case, what happened was I started doing some questions on Magoosh before doing any of these word decks or stuff like that. And at first, so Magoosh also gives you an accuracy of how like the accuracy of your answers. Like, have you been getting like 40% answers right, 50% answer right, or something like that? So my accuracy at first was really bad, but after I started doing these word decks, I observed that it was easier to answer those questions, because just in order to just understand a sentence, if you know the specific meaning of the word, it's easier to like just understand the whole sentence as well. So I guess I'd recommend starting off with doing those word decks, and after you're done with like 5 or 6 of those word decks, then you can start also doing some verbal questions on the side, and also doing the word decks on the side. So this is for people who are not very confident with their vocabulary. And is there anything? Okay, yeah. So the score that you should aim for in the verbal section. So the score that we have written is get more than 150, but this is in case that you are getting around 169 to 117 point. Because a good score in GRE is anything about 320. Like above that, it's cool. Like if you have about 330, it's great. But even if it's about 320, it's, I guess all the universities will accept it and it's a good score. But below that, I guess you'll have to talk to other people if you want to give GRE again, and that thing comes into the equation. But try to aim for a score greater than 320. And in order to do that, the easiest way is try to get 117 quant. And if your verbal isn't that good, then get 150. But if you never know, you might make some silly mistakes in quant. So try to aim for a score of around 155 at least in verbal. So in case your quant section doesn't go that well, then at least you can maintain a score of 320. So that's one thing that I want to point out. And is there anything else you want to add, Balaji?
Yeah, sure. So I listened to whatever Pragnesh said, and it's kind of a different approach than what I took. So I'll also tell you guys what I did. Right. It's not like I wasn't very comfortable with English, but one thing which I was constantly getting wrong was I was getting like a good number of reading comprehension questions wrong, because I wouldn't usually make the correct inference, either because I already knew a little bit about the topic, or like when I read it, I formed some conclusions in my head which were not correct. All right. So for reading comprehensions, it's suggested that if you're clicking on an answer, you better be able to point it to a sentence or two in the paragraph that actually supports your answer. All right. That's a really good way to look at reading comprehension questions. It does take up some of your time, but it ensures that your answer is correct, thereby increasing your score. I was scoring around 150 to 153, and basically, like I was doing an easy section, and then my second section went into a medium or an easy difficulty, right? So I kind of wanted to get it into a hard section, so I was averaging around 320 to 325 ish on my like first 3 to 4 mock tests. And then I kind of figured out that I was going wrong in a lot of text completion questions and sentence equivalence questions, mostly because I didn't know the words, right? I was working on it, but I realized that like that is the one thing which could really make a huge difference in my score, right? And I kind of put down like a mock test for around 3 4 days, just went head on. So there's this resource called 300 words or something like that. Barron's 300 most frequent words or something. Just Google Barron's GRE something like that, and you'll get access to that PDF. All right. So I kind of like took a printout of it and ensured that I knew each of those 300 words, right? And from like 153, my score just jumped to 163, right? Like a huge 10-mark margin just because I got 2 questions right. 2 questions right more than what I was getting earlier on the first section, right? And that added like a 10-mark margin to my overall score. So I think it's not just enough that like you have to get into the hard section for the second round, right? And another thing is, like I said, I only learned properly around 300 words. while Pragnesh did like the Magush app, I didn't have that much time to actually go over it. So I prepared only for 10 days for my GRE. Like I kind of booked the date and I didn't prepare for a while, and I was left with only 10 days. So I had to squeeze it in. All right. So 300 words does the trick. Okay. Like you just have to play it properly. Um, each and every word you learn after that is it's going to improve your score, but not by the amount that those initial 300 frequent words do. All right. So yeah, kind of get that out of the way. If you feel that you can't memorize so many words, because that's not my strength. Right? So yeah, I think that's a point of difference. And another thing I used to do was I noticed that my reading comprehension speeds were lesser, and it kind of became a bottleneck. So what I used to do was I used to just race ahead and finish all of the text completion and sentence equivalence questions, right? And then I kind of come back to reading comprehensions, because um, if I read a paragraph, then I can get three questions right. I mean, but each and every text completion question is like independent, and you have to read it before you can actually answer it. In RCs, you can kind of take a guess if your time is really low. Like each text completion question carries the same weight. Read such a long paragraph to answer that question. Right? So yeah, that's kind of one strategy that I followed, which made a big difference on my score.
One more thing which I'd like to add to what Balaji said was I followed that technique also, like trying to first finish the text completion and the sentence equivalence questions first, and then go on to the reading comprehension questions. Because even I was facing a lot of problems in the reading comprehension section. So one thing in order to improve the reading comprehension section, one thing if for the people who are in like second year and like are planning to give GRE in like an year or so, is that you can start reading novels like again. Like, so the thing is, like when you start reading frequently, your reading speed just increases. So the amount of time it will take for me to read an essay right now and for you to read an essay right now will be very different if you like have an habit of reading even newspapers, or not just novels, or newspapers, novels, and stuff like that. So reading
Also
speed is
read
really
research
important.
papers if you're really serious about going through.
Yeah, and one more thing was, I guess there'll be some YouTube videos that you can find on. So in reading comprehension, what will happen is you'll cut down the options, and you will only have like two options left, and you will be really confused that which option is right, because both the things were like mentioned in the passage, and both of them kind of make sense. So I think there are some YouTube videos and even Magoosh videos you can find online, which kind of tell you the techniques that you can use to eliminate the options also, because that will also help you a lot, and it will help you save time. And before you, one more thing which I did was, before moving on to reading the passage as such, I first read the questions, and I kind of figured out, okay, what stuff they are asking me to, they want me to look for. So this kind of like just improves your reading comprehension speed, because if there's something that the question is asking and you find that in the passage, usually the answer will be like two sentences above or two sentences below the sentence where you find the relevant part of the question. So this will like help you improve your speed, and this is the this is actually the section which will take the most amount of time, even though the questions are not that big like to answer actually. So um, practice reading comprehensions a lot, and for the other sections, text completion and sentence equivalence, just try to improve your vocabulary, and if you improve it, then you will be able to answer these questions really quickly. So yeah, I guess this is there for this slide.
Yeah, cool. I just take a look at the structure again. So you kind of do two essays in the beginning. That's issue and followed by argument, and then you start off with want and verbal sections. Right. Of these five, one of them is experimental. Um, you have to finish all of them. You don't know which the experimental one is, and then right after you finish the test, you get your result. You get the cumulative score of your quant and your verbal, and they also tell you your split scores. But yeah, and you kind of get to send your test scores to 4 universities. I think I'm not sure if this was mentioned, but when you're sending it to 4 universities, you don't have to send it to a particular department. Right? You can just send it to the overall university, and like the departments will take it, regardless of which particular department you might be applying to. Yeah, so some more information on GRE, I guess. Pragnesh, do you wanna? Which one do you want to start with? You want to start with the left or the right?
We can just start with the left one.
All right, sure. So yeah, I mean, experimental section. That's about that. What do you take with yourself? I think if you guys have to take your passport, if you're Indian, if you're an American, I'm not very sure. You cannot use any other form of identification, and like the name you've given has to match exactly with your passport. Let's say you have a different name on your driving license, doesn't matter. It's the name on your passport that counts. And when you actually get to the center, they kind of frisk you and they'll take some pictures, they get your bio data and all that. Just finish all of that process, don't give them pain. And another thing is it's really cold inside, it's super cold. And like you better relieve yourself before you go in. So yeah, I think that's very important. And like it was unprecedentedly cold inside. I couldn't bear it, especially coming from Chennai and all of that. So yeah, I think that's something which you might want to keep in mind. Like maybe take a hoodie or something with you. I don't know. Right? And don't wear shoes. I think they kind of ask you to remove that. I'm not too sure about it. Yeah, cool. And this was a question which was there in the Q&A box as well. Other tests you have to take. So you definitely have to take either TOEFL or IELTS. But I've still not taken it, so Pragnesh can handle the rest of this side.
Yeah, I'll just speak a little bit about TOEFL. I gave TOEFL, I didn't give IELTS. So one thing which I'd recommend is try to give TOEFL a few days after your GRE exam, because you would have already like prepared for most of the stuff, and it's just easier to do it after the GRE exam. You only need like 1 or 2 days of preparation for TOEFL. Like, so it has like 4 sections, which is writing, speaking, listening, and reading. So the writing section is covered if you have prepared for the GRE's analytical writing part. It's nearly the same. For the speaking and the listening part, again, you can go on YouTube and they will actually have like mock TOEFL speaking and listening tests on YouTube, and you can do that to just get a little bit of practice of what you need to do. Like you just need to, for the speaking section, you just need to speak for like 30 seconds or 1 minute on some topic that they'll give, and it'll just help you like get a understanding of how do you need to go about thinking of structuring your whatever you're going to say. And for the listening part, I think the listening section is quite easy. You just need to listen to some conversation between two people, and it's just to check if you are able to understand accents and like conversational English properly. So, and the fourth section, which is reading, again, it's like the reading comprehension part that is covered in GRE. So this is why I was recommending it to for you guys to just give TOEFL right a few days after GRE. You maximum need like 2-3 days to prepare for it. And okay, so one difference is that GRE score will be valid for 5 years and TOEFL will be valid for 2 years. So if you're giving it in your second year TOEFL, then I guess it won't be of use. I'm not sure if during your MS applications if the score will still be valid. So I guess if you're giving it in your third or fourth year, then, and if you're planning to go for masters right after your undergraduate studies, then it makes sense to give GRE and TOEFL like just a few days apart. And yeah, so the next thing is yeah. So as Balajee talked before, GRE can be a substitute for Gmat, even though I think I've heard some universities prefer Gmat, but still accept GRE scores. But I just say that if you're confused between an MBA or an MS right now, then giving a GRE, there's no harm in giving GRE right now. But I'm not the right person to talk about how which universities will accept the GRE score instead of Gmat, because I didn't apply for B schools. And yeah, we already talked about submitting the scores at the end of GRE. Just keep 4 universities at the back of your mind. And even for TOEFL, you'll have to give 4 universities at the end of the TOEFL exam. So just give the names of the same 4 universities in both the exams, and I guess that'll be cool. And yeah, so what else do you want to cover, Balajee?
Yeah, I think we've done the left. About the right, yeah, I guess it might vary significantly between the two of us. But how I went about my preparation was basically I took this TPR online thing, right? Yes, it's actually costlier than Makush, significantly so, but at that time there was this offer running where like, you kind of score more than 330, then you get like your money back, which is weird, but it worked in my favor. So that's that. TPR is actually good, but I really can't comment on the other services because, well, I've not taken them. Right? And how long to prepare? Well, you can take 2 months. I just heard today morning about like who's logged for 2 months straight and he made like 338 or something. But you can also do it in 10 days. Okay, cool. So when to give it, I would say if you can give it like once you're done with your PS1, then go for it because A, you don't really do much in PS1, and B, you don't want to keep it till the last moment because you actually get busy with either if you're really serious about a master's, you want to do a thesis, you're emailing profs and you don't have the time to prepare for GRE, or you're actually in your thesis and you're actually in the country, in a different country, and there might be procedural barriers. Also, like application procedure, I believe it's very uh, time consuming. Pragnesh should be able to comment on that better. But yeah, I'd strongly suggest that you give it like between your second and third year, right? I mean, of course, if you're not preparing for an internship or something, otherwise it kind of gets really hard. Also, winter is like a good time to prepare, like those 20 days, because I really don't think there's more than 20 days worth of prep time required for giving the GRE. Where to give again? Do it while you're home, preferably. If you're in college, then you'd probably have to travel to Mumbai. I think that's what you did, right? You had to go to Mumbai, right?
No, I gave it in Ahmedabad.
Oh, okay, cool. But I'm sure there's no center in Goa, right? I don't think there's a center in Goa.
I think there's one in Panji, I guess. I'm not sure.
Okay, right. Yeah, I mean, like if it's there, cool. Otherwise, like, just keep it in your phone. Yeah, to give or not to give, well, that depends. If you want to do some form of higher education, uh, and you're not sure, then go for GRE because GRE is accepted in both places, whereas GMAT is not acceptable for an engineering degree. How many times to give? It's pretty costly. It costs you around 15,000 to 18,000 bucks. So use your attempts wisely. And there's also some rule which states that you can't like give it again within 20 days or so. So
Yeah.
yeah, like you kind of have to keep that in mind. You can use the score in a lot of places and it holds value. I was actually applying for a thesis and earlier I was applying for a summer internship. And when you basically say that you have a GRE score, I believe that they take you more seriously because like you're kind of planning ahead and they know that you're probably going to do some higher education, right? So I believe it's useful, especially when you have a good score. It also gives them a good idea because it's it's a global test, right? And it's like a definitive metric to compare you with like their candidates, whereas CGPA may not be very good comparison, right? Even within our own campuses, like there's differences between a Pilani CGPA and a Goa CGPA, right? So yeah, use the score at each opportunity you get. Flash it everywhere; it doesn't matter. And I think a little. I noticed a few questions on how I actually managed it with whatever I was doing at that time. Well, at the end of your second year, you're not doing as much as you would be in your third year, regardless of what you think. All right. So you're definitely not going to be that busy. So use the time, finish your GRE. I used to take the metro train from my home to my PS1 station. So like when I was in the train, I just used to be on the Magoosh app doing verbal practice. And once I got to my station, I properly sat down and did GRE practice because that's what PS1 is for. And I'm sure like my friends from the PS station would agree that I didn't really do much at my PS station. So yeah, like it's a really good time. You're getting 5 credits and you're going to do things of your own interest. So make use of the time, all right? Um, and yeah, like don't like immediately give it right after your PS1. Give like maybe a 10-day break to kind of cool down and get into the flow for GRE and then like give your GRE. Yeah, over to you.
Cool. I'll just talk about my experience with GRE. So I actually prepared for 2 months for GRE. This was between my um, 3-2 and the summer vacation between 3-2 and 4-1. So I was doing a summer internship at IIT Madras then, and so I was there for around 2.5 months. So I took some time to settle down at the place in Chennai, and then I started preparing. So basically, what I kind of talked about how I prepared for it. It was basically for quant section. I just revised whatever mathematics theorems or identities and geometric formulas or whatever is there, and then I started practicing maths. And yeah, the first thing that I actually did was get a Magoosh account. So I actually had a great experience with that platform. And one more thing about it is that so it costs around 11 to 12,000 if you just buy it on a normal day or something. But I guess they have sales from time to time. And even if they don't have a sale, if you just like mail them and tell them that you are from India and you are poor, then they'll give you like 25% discount or something like that. So basically it cost me around 7 to 8K. And after I was done with, I got the 6 month Magoosh account. And after I was done with it in 2 months, I sold my account to someone else for some. So I was basically able to like even make most of my money back from the account. So I used to practice quant on. I started practicing quant on the Magoosh account first for like the first 2 weeks. And during those first 2 weeks, I kind of figured out that okay, practicing verbal doesn't make sense right now because my vocabulary isn't that great. So first, I concentrated on finishing those word decks and getting my vocabulary up to date. And then I started practicing verbal questions also. And I think like 20-25 questions for each section a day is all right. Like even if you spend like 1 or 2 hours a day, it's cool because during my internship I didn't have a lot of time in the morning to study, and I used to come back home at around 8 p.m. or so. So I barely got like 1 or 2 hours a day to study. So I guess that those many hours are enough to study for GRE. And yeah, and one more thing, as I told, I used to do was write an essay every day. So this will help you with your writing section a lot. And as Balaji said, you need to make most of your time. So usually you will be mostly preparing for GRE when you are at home during vacations or doing your internship or something. You won't be doing that on campus because you'll have a lot of other stuff to do. So, like even Balaji was studying verbal that Magoosh word deck on his metro train or something like that. So even I, whenever I used to go to my internship at IIT Madras, when I used to, so as I said, I had a notebook where I had written words which I wasn't able to, which I didn't know from the word there. So while going to my internship, I always used to revise those words. So that kind of helped me. Like every day in the morning, I was able to revise a few words. And after I was done with my internship, I used to just like sit there in the lab. They had AC, and I used to just study for GRE there only. And after coming back, I used to just relax. You don't need to actually take a lot of tension for this examination. It's cool. Um, Even if you, I know people who have actually studied for 2 days and got like 339 out of 340 in GRE. So it also is up to you to decide how much preparation time you require actually. Like if your verbal is strong or if your quant is already strong, you can identify which sections you need to focus on, and you can also kind of know how much time you want to spend on those sections. So for people who are like just starting off with the GRE prep, I'd recommend at least give one mock test if you can, because then you will have a baseline of where you are right now, like without any preparation. And from there, you can also identify sections which you're not really good at. So giving a mock test at first will help you like just getting an idea of what's happening and how you need to prepare. And where to give so when to give actually. So when I was done with my summer internship, this was around July mid. So I kept like a 1 week buffer time to just relax after my my internship, and like I revised some of the stuff in that 1 week. And I think this was around so I was going for my thesis in the first week of August. So I gave my GRE like right in between my internship and my thesis. So this was like last week of July. And where to give? I recommend you give it when you are at home. Like having your parents there to support you, and like just like even pick you up and drop you to the examination center will just like help you like just concentrate and like just chill out a bit before the exam calls. That's really important. And to give or not to give. So, okay, one thing which I want to point out is because of COVID-19, some of the universities have exempted students from the GRE, from submitting the GRE score. But if I'm not wrong, most of these universities are these low tier universities who just want to attract more students to apply for their university. So you might find people who will say that it's okay, don't give GRE. A lot of universities have exempted you from submitting GRE for your master's applications. But I just say, since it's valid for 5 years, there's no harm in just giving that examination, because you never know when you might, even if you're going for a job, you might decide 2 years later down the line that you want to go abroad for higher studies, and you won't exactly feel like studying while you're also working at some company. So just use the time you have right now, and just give GRE, because even though some universities might be exempting it right now, 2 years down the line they might still require the score. So yeah. And how many times to give? So I'd say, I guess if you have a score of above 165 in quant, I guess around 167 or above that in quant, and if your overall score is above 320, then I guess it's cool. Like you don't need to give it again. But if you're not satisfied with the score, like if you think you kind of didn't, you could have performed better in the exam, then you can again, yeah, prepare a bit more and go ahead and give it. But it's just that like it costs a lot to give it again and again. And there's again that 21 period buffer you need to keep between those two, the retest. And where to use the score? So I use it only for my master's application, but as Balaji said, if you're applying for a thesis or some internship, actually, no, for a corporate internship or something, don't tell your GRE score, because they'll think you're going for master's right after like 1 or 2 years. So anything corporate or anything related to companies, just don't mention about GRE. But if you're applying for a research internship at or a thesis, then definitely you can give your GRE score, because So a lot of people will again say that the GRE score is not very important for MS applications. It's only used for filtering out the applications. Like if your score is below 320, then your application will get rejected. But if it's above 325, then it doesn't matter. But um, I'd say that for people, especially with CGPA, a low CGPA, like this is a good metric to for your MS application reviewer uh, to judge you on. Like even if your CGPA is low, but if your GRE score is great, then it kind of can, and along with some other factors like your letter of recommendations, your statement of purpose, and stuff like that, it can help offset your lower GPA. Because I saw a lot of questions in the Google Doc in which people asked like. What happens if we have a low CGPA? Can I still apply for a master's? So I just say, even if you have a low CGPA, don't lose hope. Even my CGPA was around 7.8 when I applied for masters, and I got into most of the universities that I applied to. So, but in order to do that, you'll also need some other strong points in your profile. Like the GRE score will definitely help you kind of compensate for a lower GPA. Then your letter of recommendations and stuff like that will also help you compensate for that lower GPA. So yeah, if you have lower GPA, then you just have one more reason to study well for GRE and give it, because a higher score will just look good on your profile. Yeah, so I guess that's it from my side. I guess we can move on to the Q&A. Is there anything else you want to add, Balaji?
No, not really. No. I think that's pretty exhaustive.
I think we'll move on to the question and answer section. The first question is, after cracking GRE exams, can one opt for any branch or stream in any college? I mean, is it possible to make career shift to some other field?
So I'd like to say, this is a GRE general test. So if you're from mechanical and you're applying for a computer science degree for your MS, or even if you're just applying for the mechanical degree, you're going to give the same GRE test. So it doesn't matter which branch you're applying to, as long as that university requires that GRE score. I'd recommend you to give GRE.
I mean, GRE, it's like it's like a math and English test doesn't really affect your profile in the sense that it tracks. But I think if you really wanna shift tracks, you better start working on whatever you want to shift into.
Yeah. Okay. Next question. What, according to you, is worth, MS or ME?
This is exactly not related to GRE, but the basic difference between MS and Masters in Engineering is that the Masters in Engineering course is more professional based. So in an MS degree, you'll mostly have to do a thesis at the end of your degree, and it kind of also prepares you for a PhD degree in the future. But the Masters in Engineering degree is mainly for people who have like worked for a few years and want to or or just or people who definitely know that they want to go for a job right after their masters. So it kind of you don't have the option. I won't say you don't have the option to go for a PhD, but if you want to go for a PhD in the future, then I'd recommend you to go for an MS. But if you know definitely that you just want to go for a job and you just want to do courses and focus on your courses, then I think the engineering degree would be sufficient.
For GRE in second year, should we go with a normal flow and give it after the third or the fourth year?
Okay. Yeah, I mean you could do that, but like I said, it depends. Okay, you're definitely not going to be as free as you were in second year. So it's like it's your call. End of the day, but like do what you can when you can. Right.
Next question, I think. Can we give GRE in photo? So, what are the prospects of getting the score just before we prepare our application?
Okay, so I think one thing I missed out on was so when you give GRE, you'll get the score. We'll know your score on the spot. But the thing is, when you choose those four universities that you want to give your send your scores to, it will take like around 2 weeks to for GRE for the ETS organization to send those scores to the universities. So usually the application deadlines are in December. The first deadlines are in December, and there are some deadlines in January, I guess. So if you are giving GRE like pretty late, then I guess just give it by November mid, because you need some time for the scores to reach the universities also. So if you are planning to apply for MS uh, for the fall semester, the fall semester is basically the semester which starts from August. Then the deadlines will mostly be in December. So just give GRE before November mid.
Yeah, also like when you say 4 to, I mean like you're probably past deadline if you're a single degree student and you want to pursue like MS or something right after. But if you're like a dualite or you want to give like a year or two before you apply, then yeah, sure, 4 to works.
Okay, I think moving on. Which preparation material did you use for brushing up the quant topics specifically? I mean, could you list down all the resources?
So for me, I did all the questions that were there on the Magoosh question bank. Then for quant, the Manhattan 7 pound book is actually very good for quant. That's what I've heard. And if you still want to practice more, then I guess the ETS books, the books that ETS provides are more than enough. But I guess the highest difficulty is in the Manhattan books. The other books don't have that hard questions, but I guess these were the resources that I used. Were there anything else that you used, Balaji?
I use the Princeton reviews material
Oh yeah.
only, and like I did it only for 10 days, so I didn't actually do quant outside of the mock. So yeah, that's there. Like, I didn't have time outside of the mock tests.
Okay. At what time should one start writing mock tests? I think Pragnesh, you should take this up.
Okay. So as I said, try to just do one mock test before you start preparing, so that you know where you are. And after that, start solving questions. And I think after that, you'll kind of get a gist of how well you are doing in those questions, because you'll be seeing those answers and stuff like that. So maybe if you only have like 1 month to prepare, then I guess if you have only 1 month to prepare, then just start uh, giving tests after 1 week of preparation. And but if you have a long time, like 2 or 3 months, then you can like give mock tests every weekend or so. Then you can also see if there's any progress in scores that you are getting. And also, yeah, one thing which I forgot to point out was don't get disheartened if you're not doing well in those tests, because even as Balaji pointed out, his average score was around 320-ish in those mock tests. And even I actually didn't actually my highest score in all the mock tests which I gave was 390. But on the final day, it was 335. So I just would like to say that if you're scoring low in those mock tests, don't give up. Just try to learn from your mistakes, like where you're going wrong and stuff like that. Just try to improve upon those areas. And don't worry a lot about how much you get on the final day, because you never know what type of questions you're going to get. So, um, yeah.
Uh, what is the best way to learn new words and then well remember them for a long time?
I guess I answered that also. So for me, basically, I was revising the words which I wasn't able to, which I didn't know from the Magoosh word deck, and like every week I used to kind of go through the list of those words, and I also used to list down the synonyms and antonyms of those words. So that kind for I did that for like around 1 month, and that kind of helped me a lot with improving my vocabulary.
Next question. Yeah. What is the best way to prepare for the verbal section? Do some colleges weigh a higher preference to verbal than quant?
So, so for if you're applying for masters, you can go on the college website and they will mostly have a place where they'll mention the average scores of the applicants, average GRE and TOEFL scores. So they'll kind of mention that the average score in quant was usually around 167 or 166, and for verbal it was around something 155 or something. So that will kind of give you an idea of how much score you need for the particular university. And I guess it also changes from university to university. So like for some universities, your GRE scores might not be valid. For some universities, your GRE score might be valid. But verbal section is not considered that important by universities, but at the end of the day, it helps. Your total score is also dependent on the verbal section, right? So like even if you get 117 quant, a 145 score in verbal is not acceptable. Like you might not clear the cutoffs in some universities, and your score will be still 315, which is below 320. So it's not considered very important by universities, but still it's just good to have a decent verbal score.
Yeah. So I think next question. What all things are necessary for getting admission in foreign universities except GRE score and CG?
Okay, so this turned into a BITS to MS PhD talk. But basically, so you need a CGPA, you need a GRE, you need your TOEFL score. Then you'll need a few letter of recommendations from your professors at your university or from your internships. Or if you did a corporate internship, then maybe your manager. So you mainly need 3 letter of recommendations from 3 different people, preferably from academia like professors. Then you'll need a statement of purpose. This is statement of purpose is the thing which will take the most amount of time to write. So basically, that's one of the reasons why even Balajee was advising to give your GRE before your thesis or before you are doing your internships. Because mostly, if you're going for your thesis in 4.1 or 5.1 if you're a dualite, then you will be applying for masters at the end of your thesis or like basically during the month of December. So at that time, you'll be working on your thesis project. You will be also doing your MS application and stuff like that. So that's why give your GRE before you start your MS applications, because that will be one less burden on your head. Then you can completely focus on writing your statement of purpose, and in some cases you'll also have to write your own letter of recommendation. So uh, yeah, so better keep some time to just work on the SOP drafts and your letter of recommendations. But I guess these are the 4 main things: GRE, TOEFL score, CGPA, letter of recommendation, and statement of purpose, and basically your resume. These are the 5 most important things if you're applying for a master's. Uh, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Um, I've heard that GRE mainly tests your proficiency in English. Rest is easy. How much will reading novels help?
Answered, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, you can read it if you want. Like, if you have if you're giving GRE in like 1 year or 2 years or so, then you can start right now. It doesn't harm uh, taking it up as a hobby. Also, it will help improve your reading speed. It will help you with your writing section. It will help you increase your vocab. But if your GRE is in like the next 2 weeks, then I'd say that practice questions more than trying to read a novel right now. Yeah.
Or like start reading research papers if you're really serious about a master's. It's really hard. It's really hard to.
Oh yeah, one thing which I want to recommend is you can start reading New York Times or a good newspaper, because a lot of I think reading comprehensions from which come in the GRE exams are kind of similar to what New York Times articles are. So, and it will also again help you increase your vocabulary and stuff like that. So, and those it's just fun to read um, uh, the New York Times and those articles. So That's one thing you can do if you don't want to read a novel.
Yeah, the next question is also on the verbal section. Should you focus more on memorizing the set of words and the meanings, practicing verbal section problems directly?
Depends what you're weak at.
Yeah, that's true actually. Like if you have a decent vocabulary, then I guess you should focus on practicing more. But
No
even
one
if you are
has
just
GRE vocabulary.
but even if if even if you are I won't say that just go and try to memorize words, because there are a lot of things that you'll have to practice. Like in reading comprehension, you'll have to practice eliminating those options, and there'll be a lot of different stuff that you'll realize when you start practicing that couldn't be done if you are only memorizing words. So keep on practicing also on the side, but you can there's no harm in improving your vocabulary at the same time.
Yeah. Okay, moving on. Does having external coaching like GRE Edge or Galvanize actually help in preparation, or are they not really necessary?
So if you, I guess everyone in BITS is like smart enough to clear GRE on their own, but there's no one will keep it against you that you took an external coaching for GRE, because I mean I kind of use Magoosh, but Magoosh is basically where you are like self learning by yourself. But I guess GRE kind of gives you GRE Edge kind of gives you a personalized help. I'm not sure about it, but if you want, I guess GRE Help Edge also helps you with your MS applications along with your GRE preparation. So if you kind of don't have enough time for your applications as well, then you can just go for the. One of my friends used the GRE Edge package, and he got a 328 in GRE, and he got into University of California, San Diego, and he was pretty happy with the support they provided, I guess. So it's fine if you go for such coaching institutes or platforms, but you can even do it on your own, there, like without spending any money. It's up to you.
Yeah,
Or
I
like
think the
in the
next,
summer, just
yeah.
look out for some good offers, because I found I found something which gave me the resource at literally no cost. So uh, during summers, typically around May, June, they put out these crazy offers. So you might end up getting some good help for as low as 1K or 2K. It's possible.
I think the next question is pretty interesting. What schools are you planning to go based on your CGPA and GRE?
Do you wanna start with? Do you wanna start, Balajee?
Okay, so I'll change the question a little, because I'm not even sure if I'll be able to go for a master's right now. But I'll tell you which four I sent my scores to. I basically sent it to Stanford, UC Berkeley, Caltech, and University of Maryland. Okay. Yes, I can see Pragnesh laughing over there. It is crazy because a like you don't generally apply to Caltech. Okay, you generally don't want to. B, University of Maryland's not that good. It's just that like I had this amazing mentor, and he kind of did his PhD and everything at University of Maryland. So I kind of had a good image of it at that time. I hadn't really thought about which school I wanted to go to, right? But that being said, there's like I think two ways of looking at it. One is you send your scores to those universities which you feel is like your dream, all right? So like you don't really feel bad when you're putting the application. You don't have to pay more to kind of make like a desperate attempt at an application. But yeah, that being said, also kind of like look up universities, look up programs. For instance, MIT doesn't require your GRE scores if you're applying there. Also, they don't provide a master's only option. I think same goes for Harvard, and I believe Caltech also has this similar route. Caltech and UC Berkeley, they both clearly state on their website that if you're applying to a master's only program, there's like very low chance that you'll get admitted. They encourage students to apply to the master's plus PhD program or go for the master's in engineering program. Right? They say if you don't want a PhD, go for a master's in engineering. So you kind of have to do this background research before you actually gain those 4 universities that you want your scores into.
So one thing which I'd like to point out is that so this is for, I think, the electrical and computer engineering department. So this might vary from university to university and department to department. So if something applies to one department or one university, it might differ from that university, or even in the same university, it might differ from department to department.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah. For my profile, so my basically during while I was applying for my masters, my CGPA was around 7.8, and my GRE was 335. And at that time, I was doing my thesis at UT Austin. So I applied to around 9 universities, and so till now I have gotten into Georgia Tech, University of Wisconsin-Madison, TU Delft, then University of California, San Diego, and North Carolina State University. So one thing which I'd recommend is, based on my experience, is that at least apply to one or two dream universities, like universities which you think you might just not get into. Because a lot of people told me, a lot of people discouraged me actually for applying for universities like Stanford or just UIUC, University of Illinois, Urbana-Champaign, and some top universities like that. And I just didn't end up applying to them because everyone said, okay, at your CGPA, they'll just like go away your application. So my ambitious universities were Georgia Tech, University of Wisconsin-Madison, and these universities. And Indian, what has happened is that if you're able to compensate for your low CGPA based on your GRE score, your letters of recommendations, your statement of purpose, then you can offset that low CGPA. Like this happened in my case, and I want to tell like most of you guys that if people are discouraging you to apply to that university based just on your low CGPA, then uh, don't listen to them. If you have this gut feeling that you want to apply, that you really want to go there, then just go for it and apply. Because this is something which I regret right now. Because I ended up getting into most of the universities I applied to, if all my ambitious, safe universities and moderate universities. So just take the leap of faith and apply if possible. And if you have a high CGPA, then just go for it. Like there's no harm. So yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I think I'll definitely remember that, Pragnesh. What was your score in mock tests that you gave before starting your preparation?
Before starting my prep, see, basically, I never scored well in any of my mock tests. I guess I got around 315 in my first mock test, and the last mock test which I gave was around 390 in GRE. So I guess in my case, I don't know if I got lucky or if I was able to compensate for my mistakes in the end. It I just don't know what happened, but just don't get discouraged by a low GRE mock test scores, and just go with full confidence during your final exam.
Right.
What about you?
I was averaging. I was actually averaging 333, to be honest. Like I averaged that score towards the end, but like I did start off at 315-ish, and like I said, it kind of took me 2-3 tests before I realized how I could like significantly improve my score. Probably that's what happened with you as well. And so like it's just that, like, one question which pushes you into like the hard section, and your score just like jumps. It scales like anything. So Yeah, like Pragnesh said, don't get disheartened, but like if you're giving mock tests, that's kind of where you're gonna get, especially the two free mock tests that you get on ETS website. It's pretty indicative of your score. I scored. It's uncanny, but I actually scored 333 on both those tests, and like I actually ended up with a 333 as well.
Yeah. I'm sorry, I think the next question belongs to MS PhD, but one of the students is asking it. What's the specifics of the letter of recommendations and how effective is it if I have my letter of recommendation from a professor from another branch?
Another branch. So
I actually remember this being answered on MS PhD. So like if you really want to know, like before you start Pragnesh, it said that like if the different stream is what you're applying to, then it's great. But if that's not the case, then they better be in like a very high position or something like that. Right? I think that's the answer was given in the MS PhD section. Yeah, like Pragnesh.
Yeah, so I think two things that will matter is firstly, if they are a very highly renowned professor, as Balajee said. If that's the case, then yeah, definitely go for it. And the second thing is, I guess if your project is kind of like an interdisciplinary project, like so in the letter of recommendation, that person will talk about the project or whatever stuff you did under him or her. So if it's kind of like an interdisciplinary project that is pertaining to the topic to the field that you're applying for in MS, and if he's going to talk about it in the letter of recommendation, then I guess then also it's fine. But I guess it's you should try to have people from your field if as far as possible.
Yeah. Okay. Next question. What are the incentives for higher education? On an average, how much does your CTC increase from just graduate level?
Wait, I still don't have a job right now, so I just can't answer this question. So one thing which I can say is like if you're going for a master's, so I'll give this example related to like electronics, the field of electronics, because that's like my field. So there are some jobs that are specifically given to bachelor students. So like there's a design verification role that you will get more mainly if you're a bachelor student. Then there's a design role which is mainly given to like people who have a master's degree or a PhD degree. So definitely a CTC is going to increase if you go for a master's, and it will also increase the amount of roles that you can do. Like as I said, you won't be just limited to that design verification role that you were given. So it's if you want to progress. You want to progress in your so a lot of people are kind of like stuck at the manager level. That's what my friends who went for PS were telling me. So a lot of people, what they do is they work for 5-6 years also, and when they feel their career is kind of stagnant, then also they kind of opt to go for a master's degree abroad. So so right now in today's market, a high level degree is really valuable, and especially in fields like I guess computer science is still fine, but at least in electronics, mechanical engineering, chemical engineering, it's highly recommended that you go for a master's degree abroad, because anyway, while applying for a job, you won't have a lot of industrial experience. So I guess. Does that answer that question? But I'm not exactly the right person to answer it. Like, how much does your CTC increase?
I think with that question, I come to the end of the list of questions I have. You guys, do you want to add something else?
I guess I feel I kind of covered everything that was possible. Is there anything else you want to talk about, Balajee?
Yeah, no, not really. So, yeah, I mean, like, good luck, guys, if you're taking it. If you're struggling with the decision of whether or not take it, go for it.
One last thing that I want to add is so I guess there's a blog written by two of my friends, Dhruva Barfiwala and Amok Dabolkar. If you know them, I guess you will be able to find that blog easily. So even that blog is related to GRE and how to So Dhruva Barfiwala got a 340 out of 340 in GRE. So both of them have written a blog and on how to prepare for that examination. So I don't know how I can give a link to that blog, but
You
if
could
you
like
guys,
maybe share it with the ARC team and they'd like send it out with the recording.
yeah, we can do that. So I guess, oh yeah, I'll put the link on the chat. So yeah, you can go to the blog as well.
Yeah, I think with that we'll come to the end of the talk. I thank ARC for conducting the talk, our speakers Pragnesh and Balajee for the time and insights, and I would also like to thank the participants for attending the talk. I'm sure all of you have a better understanding of GRE and how to ace it. So thank you and good night.